I want to introduce to you a very special guest, Barbara Toens. And Barbara has a PhD in pricing. And if we go back to the beginning, the basics of what we do, pricing is a part of the 5 Ps of marketing. But most of us don't have a lot of training in pricing. And Barbara pulls out some really interesting things about how pricing not only impacts the value and the ability to sell our business, but how it impacts trust. So, Barbara, I would love to ask your expert opinion because of the hundreds of CMOs and CROs, C-suite B2B executives that I've interviewed. Nobody has your point of view. Nobody has a PhD in pricing. Yet, to your point, it's one of the P's in marketing our businesses. None of us have a background. None of us, quite frankly, have a point of view or a clue of what we're doing when it comes to pricing, really. What does it mean to have a PhD in pricing to begin with? I'll just kind of open it up that way and let you explain that.
Well, yeah, it might sound a bit strange for a marketing person to focus on pricing, but I started my career in the automotive industry with Ford, with Chrysler, and was very lucky to have the chance to get a good training and education in all the traditional 4 or 5 Ps of marketing. And especially with Chrysler, I learned really how important the pricing part is to be able to make an impact with your overall marketing strategy. In the end, pricing is one of the revenue drivers, probably the most effective one. If you look at statistics, 1% in price increase trickles down to a huge impact in profitability increase. You would have to grow your sales volume probably 5, 10 times more to achieve the same profitability increase impact. For me, it was clear, and I saw by example, to be really heard and taken seriously in what you do with marketing, besides, oh yeah, you generate leads and create some nice visuals. To make the bottom line impact, it takes pricing. Because in the end, with your price setting, you also send a communication message. Your price point signals something. It can signal immediately, wow, premium must be a value brand, or cheap, maybe a volume brand, but immediately it sets an expectation within your audience, who usually has a reference price in mind to compare your offer to. So you're immediately in the mind of your prospective customer, you're in a certain box. You're premium to your reference, same level your reference, or cheaper, so maybe more or less value to your reference, but you send an immediate message. And all this for me needs to be part of a cohesive marketing approach, because what we communicate in our posts, on our website, in our direct mailing, needs to be in line with what our price points are signaling out in the market. If not, we lose credibility, and the famous trust is also just non-existent. So with that, I see price also as a big trust builder, really, for the overall marketing function. If you deliver value, if the value is perceived by the customer or by the prospect, all that is marketing work, then in the end, you must also be able to extract that value. Otherwise, the business isn't sustainable. And all that I see as the role of a really professional marketing function and a well-rounded marketing function. So
You have
that's, yeah.
just forever changed the way that I look at pricing. We are in the B2B world, we are in a trust epidemic right now, where trust has been going down for decades. You can look at the Edelman LinkedIn study that goes all over Europe and all over US, all over the world. Decades it's been doing like this, to the point where the last time they went out, they interviewed over 32,000 respondents. And the result was, this is the most important thing, I think, is that those respondents viewed 61% viewed business leaders as being intentionally misleading, with exaggerating information and statistics. So if you think about that, our brands are trust marks. if we don't have trust in our brands, what do we have really to offer, right? And it's the number one reason why B2B buyers are waiting longer and longer to talk to us in the buyer's journey because they don't trust us. So they are going to other sources to get information. And one of the big sources is their peer community. They see their peers and trust them at the same level they do scientists. That was a whole nother different study.
Mm.
So when you just said that pricing had direct implication on perceived value, but perceived trust, I want to understand that a little bit more when you talk about actually both of those, because we all want to push up our prices, but we're scared, right? Let's get that out in the open, right? We're scared. We all want to increase prices, but we're scared to do it to a level that we're going to hurt and impact business and sales, right? I'll let you choose which way to go with that question in terms of like, how do we know how to push our prices? And how do we know that pricing is impacting trust in our business?
Good points and key points, getting to the core of, the point of good pricing. Well, basically, I think if you look at the pricing process as it's perceived, or how a customer or a prospect perceives a price he's given, it's in effect a very simple process that we all do as buyers. You see a price point, you compare it to what you think might be comparable, which also depends on your personal experience. What are your references? And then you see, is it a like to like, or is there a difference in the offer? And that difference is usually what we need to focus on as price
Right.
setters, as marketing, as a company, because that difference can usually be a sum of various value drivers. But this is what's most important is these value drivers must be identifiable. You must be
Hmm.
able to point them out, to prove them, and much more important, they must be perceived as value by your customer. In the end, all that matters is how our customers perceive. We might have a beautiful product detail or what we think, what's the value of this product. If the customer doesn't perceive it, it's useless, basically. So as marketeers, as a business, we must first of all recognize, identify the value we bring to our customer segment, do the research. How does our prospect segment really perceive what we think is value? Is it value? Or maybe
Right.
there's other things that matter a lot to customers. And then this must be clearly communicated across all touch points to that customer via marketing, sales, all the touch points we have. And this, I think, raises the willingness to pay of our prospects, of our customers, so that in the end, the sales conversation will first focus on the value you bring in your products, your services, your expertise, your thought leadership. And then the price is just the outcome. Well, of course, you have some negotiation up, down, you give a little bit, but it should not be a huge surprise in the end when you quote the price. But it all depends on you need to identify, communicate the value. Then I think you're in a strong position to extract the value. And I think that's also where it leads to trust, because trust is also that our market trusts our expertise and honesty in our, first of all, our understanding of their business, to
Yeah.
identify this is really value to you. This is not just some marketing thing, but true value to you. So they realize, yeah, you understand my business. And to also have the belief, yeah, what you identify as value really impacts my operations, enables me to operate more efficiently, whatever it is I'm looking for. And then price really comes into play, that when you then get to the last stage of the negotiation, you quote your price. Of course, you have some flexibility in terms of
Yeah.
discounting, but
Yeah.
I think you lose all trust if you quote a price here, you notice, ooh, customer is hesitant, and you drop by 20%. I think that wins you a one-time deal, but the trust is gone. you can show your willingness to get the deal, to support the customer with a certain discount range, but it must always have clear reasoning. I will push through, I will fight to give you this discount because you are a strategic customer. I see us growing by a high percentage over the next 5 years. I see you have a certain need right now. I support you now, but please keep in mind, this is not the standard.
Right.
With this kind of conversation, you retain the trust. But if the customer sees you as, oh, I put the pressure on, you drop the price, then what part of the value story you told was actually true?
Right.
So for me, this all links price, trust, and communicating a certain value to your market is fully interlinked, really.
So here's one of the main takeaways that I'm taking from this is that a price that pushes the buyer a little bit, right? That maybe into a zone of a little bit of uncomfortable feeling because it's like, okay, I really want to do this, but I'm getting a premium service. I'm getting something that is highly valuable. And if I, as the seller, stick with that, I'm demonstrating trust in what I know I'm providing to you. And I have confidence in that, right? And that's not arrogance, but that's confidence that there is a service that has a certain value. And I'm not willing to lower that because that level of pricing allows us to deliver that level of service to you. Right? That has a very different conversation than I know, oh, let me just slice it 20% or 30% and I'll get the deal, right? That is sending a mixed signal. But if we stand strong in our pricing, we're always worried that we're going to lose that deal, right? But in the end, the deals that value what we do and are willing to pay for what we do are going to be, I would imagine, the ones that are longer term clients, more loyal clients. Our NRR score, which we should all be keeping big track of, is going to be higher and higher. Is there poke holes in that thinking? Is that a good takeaway from what you're saying?
Absolutely. And I think it becomes quite evident if you do an analysis like customer lifetime value of your customer base. You might see the ones with the highest customer lifetime value are not the ones you give the biggest discount to.
Yeah.
These are more the short and midterm customers. Your long-term customers are the ones where you stick to the value proposition you bring. But I think as part of communicating this total value package, it's also very important, especially for our sales colleagues, to also list all the services you deliver you don't charge for. You might have a customer portal, 24/7 access, which is just part of the package. Your sales teams speaking local languages, so customers don't have to be pushed to speak in English. Sometimes express delivery, you might just do free of charge as part of the premium package. So it's very important as during the conversation, these get pointed out and just for the customer to know, right, besides the product, the service, I get this, and they don't charge for because that's the package I pay for. But we have to remind customers of all the value added that's actually, part of the deal in the end.
Now, here's an interesting question because it just came to mind. But I know, like in my business, I'm constantly looking for ways that I can provide additional value, right? Supporting the value that I provide as a business. How important is that? Like, it seems to me when we innovate, we think about innovating in product, right, in our service lines. We don't necessarily think about innovating in terms of how we go to market and price our products. We should be thinking about how next year and the year beyond and the year beyond, we are moving our pricing strategy, especially back to what you said at the very beginning. A 1% increase in pricing has a dramatic impact on profitability, right? So part of our long-term business growth strategy for long-term sustainable growth should be how are we how are we increasing our prices? But not just for the sake of increasing prices. How are we doing that? How are we innovating in the way that we provide value? Is that a good line of thought?
Totally. And for me, it all evolves around customer centricity. We need to really know our customers. You know, for some customers, it might provide immense value if you're able to deliver within a certain time window during the day. If you can confirm, okay, I will deliver between 11 and 12:30 because you happen to have your staff on site. That might create immense value, seems like a little step, but to the customer, it shows, wow, you guys really fully respect my operations and understand them. So I think sometimes we can also think of the little value-added step, which sum up to quite a huge impact, instead of always looking for the latest product innovation, the latest patent or something. And step by step, we build more customer intimacy. And in the end, we are really seen as a partner, not just the supplier, but the business partner with whom I, as a customer, grow my operations. And that really, again, comes back to the sustainable and trust relationship we can really build like this.
So I've already felt like I've gone through an MBA program here, which is fantastic. If there was one thing that you wanted to say to other C-suite individuals, whether it's a CEO, a CRO, a CMO, anybody in the C-suite, a CFO, what would your recommendation be for them as they now are rethinking their pricing strategy and what they're doing? What's the one thing you'd want them to take away?
I think the key thing is start with a customer. Don't start with internal costs. Don't start inside out, looking what's my cost to develop this, what's the markup I want. Start outside in. Always start with the customer. For a product, for a service, what's that customer's willingness to pay?
Yep.
And then walk it back to how can we package it? How can we communicate it? Everything for me starts with the market, with the customer.
They are the highest voice of authority in our business.
Definitely.
Why would we start anywhere else? Well, Barbara, thank you so much. I feel like literally I've gone through an MBA course, and I just wanted to say thank you for sharing this, because this is a perspective that most of us just don't have at the C-suite level, that yet we're planning long-term for our business. So thank you very much for doing this for
Pleasure,
us today.
Steve. Sure.